Friends, this is the story of an orphan boy who possessed magical powers that allowed him to predict when and how a person would die. Let's see how. Well, the story begins with a tragic scene where a plane has just crashed, killing hundreds. But luckily, a little boy named Shinichiro is alive and searching for his parents, who may have been killed. Just then, he hears a girl's voice asking for help. But Shinichiro is so young that he doesn't know what to do. Suddenly, a large part of the plane falls on top of the girl, and the scene shifts to a moment a few years later. We see Shinichiro now grown up and working at a car garage. Shinichiro's owner is Tajesu, who treats him like his own son, and Shinichiro also sees in Tetsuya a father figure. Tetsuya is soon opening another garage and wants Shinichiro to become its manager. However, Shinichiro declines the offer because he feels he's not the right fit for the position. Tajesuya still gives him time to think. His daughter, Misako, also tries to reason with Shinichiro, as she too believes he's the right fit for the position. Meanwhile, Kaneda, who works at the same garage, was upset because he's always been jealous of Shinichiro because Tajesuya always prioritized him in everything. He often vented his anger by harassing Shinichiro. Even today, he abuses him and pushes him away. As a result, Shinichiro's mobile phone breaks, and after finishing work, he goes to a shop to get it repaired. A young woman named Aoi greets him there. Shinichiro explains that his phone is broken. According to Aoi, it was an old model, and parts were hard to find. She somehow manages to fix it. So, even at night, Shinichiro looks at his phone and remembers Aoi. The next day, he takes the subway to work, where a man standing next to him suddenly starts to lose his hands. We are then told that Shinichiro acquired a power at the plane crash site, which allows him to see people's futures. Specifically, his death and the man's disappearing hands were evidence that he was about to die. But Shinichiro can do nothing. So he goes to work. Misuko tries to persuade him to become the manager, but Shinichiro doesn't respond. At night, he passes by the same mobile shop, still searching for Aoi. A stranger bumps into him, and Shinichiro, out of curiosity, follows him to see what will happen to him. A few blocks away, a car runs him over. Shinichiro regrets that he couldn't do anything for her, and the next day, he asks Misuko what she would do if she were given the power to see people's futures and know when someone is going to die. Misuko replies that it's not a power, but a curse, and that she doesn't want such a power. There, Shinichiro finds that his mobile phone is malfunctioning again. So he goes to Aoi again to get his phone fixed. But he's alarmed to see that Aoi's hands are also disappearing. So he decides to save her and calls her to meet after work. Aoi is initially hesitant. Then she promises to meet at the coffee shop. There, Shinkairo sees that Aoi's hands are healing and is overjoyed. Aoi asks why he called her there. He tells her that he has the power to see the future. But he doubts Aoi will believe him. So he apologizes and leaves. But while he's on his way home, he feels a sharp pain in his chest. But he manages to regain his composure and returns home. The next day, confidently, he tells Tajesu that he's ready to become a manager. He also works late into the night at the garage, where Aoi comes to meet him. Shinichiro is surprised to see Aoi, and Aoi explains that she got Shinichiro's address from the store and that she's here to discuss something important. Shinichiro offers him coffee, and Aoi, holding a newspaper, explains that a factory not far from her store was attacked last night, killing many people. Aoi could have been among those killed, as she takes the same route home every day after work. But Shinichiro saved her last night. She says she remembers that future and thanks Shinichiro. Shinichiro laughs it off, and the next day, Misuko comes into the store, realizing that someone was there last night. She asks Shinichiro about this, and Shinichiro tells her the truth with complete honesty. Misuko is delighted by this, as this was the first time Shinichiro was befriending someone. Previously, he hadn't even let anyone get close to him. Here, a brief story is told about a girl named Mariko who worked at Teshua's garage. Mariko had a crush on Shinichiro, but Shinichiro never paid her any attention. So, Mariko began a relationship with a wealthy customer who visited the garage. She came aboard the ship and left forever. The story returns to the present, where Masuko and Shinichiro hear Tetsuya yelling at Kaneda for taking a customer's car from the garage on a date without informing him. Instead of admitting his mistake, Kaneda becomes angry at both Tetsuya and Shinichiro and even hits Shinichiro, causing Tetsuya to punch him hard and fire him. However, as Kaneda leaves, Shinichiro sees Tetsuya's hands suddenly disappearing. This means Tetsuya's life is also in danger. However, Shinichiro, who considered him his father, decides to save him and, after finishing work, asks him to have dinner with him. Tetsuya agrees, and the two begin walking towards the restaurant. But on the way, Shinichiro's attention was focused solely on Tajesu and his surroundings. Suddenly, from a dark corner, Kaneda, armed with an iron rod, rushes towards Tajesu. But Shinichiro intervenes and saves him. Tajesu's life is saved. However, Shinichiro suffers a heart attack and awakens in the hospital. Masuko explains that Tajesu has forgiven Kaneda because he realized his mistake. Dr. Takio examines Shinichiro and suggests that it may have been due to stress. Shinichiro sees a little girl disappearing, so he tries to follow her. Takio stops him and asks, "Did you also see the girl disappear?" After this, the two talk on the roof of the hospital, where Takio reveals that he also has this ability, and it's called Fortune Eye. But we are ordinary humans, not gods. Therefore, we have no right to change or play with anyone's fate. And if someone does, it could endanger their own life. So, let whatever is happening to someone happen. Otherwise, your life could be in danger, and this could be the reason for your heart attack. After this, Shinichiro goes all the way thinking about this. The next day, he calls Aoi to meet him and proposes to her. But Aoi leaves without giving him an answer. But the next day, she agrees, which leads to them starting to meet again, and their love deepens. Meanwhile, Kata comes to Tejesuwa to ask for a job again, and Shinichiro also recommends him. Tejesuwa hires him. Kaneda thanks both Tejesuwa and Shinichiro. The next day, Shinichiro buys a pair of rings for himself and Aoi. He also goes to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor warns him that a further heart attack could be fatal. Afterward, Shinichiro goes to his garage. A young man comes in to get his car repaired. This man is none other than Mariko's boyfriend. So, Shinichiro asks about Mariko. However, the young man speaks negatively about her and even speaks ill of her. However, Shinichiro remains calm. And the next day, when he comes to pick up his car, Shanakaro sees that it too is vanishing into thin air. Meaning that it too is about to die. But he decides to do nothing. A few days later, we see Shanakaro at the same man's funeral, where his little daughter is crying for her father. Seeing the girl, Shanakaro is deeply saddened. He also repeatedly remembers the girl from the plane crash site, whom he couldn't save. The next day, dejected, he sits in a park where some kindergarten children are playing with their teacher. Just then, a girl comes up to him and asks for a ball. But this girl's body is also slowly disappearing. The other children, and even the teacher's body, suddenly begin to disappear. So, Shanakaro checks the hands of all the children. But the teacher thinks he's inappropriate with the children. So, she takes all the children and leaves. But a letter from the school drops from her hand, stating that the children are about to go on a train trip. He realizes something is wrong. So, the next day, he goes to the station, where several passengers have been disappearing in a similar manner. Then, Shinichiro realizes that the train leaving at 7:30 a.m. the next day is going to have an accident. He was certain of this because the school letter stated that the children would be traveling on the same train the next day. Then, Shinichiro remembers that Aoi also travels on this train, meaning her life was also in danger. So, he goes to Aoi's house that night to meet her and is delighted to see her safe and sound. But to protect her from the impending danger, he asks Aoi to accompany him on the trip for 3 days. Aoi hesitates at first, but then agrees, and Shinichiro is delighted. But he also needs to save the children and the other passengers. So he calls the school to cancel the trip. However, due to the lack of a valid reason, the school authorities refuse to cancel the trip. In the evening, Shinichiro writes a letter to Aoi, telling her the truth, including the lie about the trip. He also writes about how much he loves her. But his entire plan is ruined the next morning when Aoi texts him, saying her co-worker is unwell and needs to go to the store. Upon reading this message, Shinichiro leaves for the station. He runs towards the train. But the police were waiting for him outside the house. The schoolteacher had filed a complaint against him for misbehaving with the children. To save Aoi, he escapes from the police. Upon reaching the station, he finds that Aoi has already boarded the train. So, he catches a taxi and heads to another station to stop the train before it reaches there. There, Shanakaro sees construction work underway. Seeing this, Shanakaro realizes that a train being used for construction will fall on the train carriages, killing everyone on board. Shanakaro prevents this from happening, instead standing in front of the train with a smoke candle. Aoi, who was in the carriage just behind the engine, also sees Shanakaro and tells the driver to stop the train. The driver does. Meanwhile, we see a train falling. This means Shinichiro had prevented the train accident and saved the lives of all the passengers. Aoi immediately exits the train where Shinichiro was sitting on the tracks. As soon as Aoi sees him, she begins to cry because he had sacrificed his life to save Aoi and the other passengers. At Shinichiro's funeral, Aoi learns that she is the first girl Shinichiro had ever been so close to. This makes her even more sad. In the next scene, we learn that Aoi is the girl who asked Shinichiro for help at the crash site. But due to the trauma, Shinichiro did not remember that he had saved Aoi's life. It is also revealed here that Aoi possesses Fortune Ice and has always been searching for Shinichiro. So, the first time Shinichiro came to the shop and reacted to Aoi's disappearing hands, she knew Shinichiro was the boy. Furthermore, she had deliberately boarded the train because when Shinichiro went to ask her out for a trip, Aoi had noticed his body disappearing. So she decided to board the train to save Shinichiro. But Shinichiro also risked his life to save his love. After this, we see Aoi reading the same letter that Shinichiro had written. She cries profusely as she reads it, and after wearing the rings he brought her, she feels Shinichiro, and the story ends there. So, friends, please let us know how you liked this story by commenting. Please subscribe to our channel, Film Edit, by liking and sharing the video, and press the bell icon to avoid missing upcoming movie explanations. See you in the next video.